What greater schus could there be for Klal Yisrael as we find ourselves approaching the ominous day of Tisha B'Av once again? What greater zechus could there be for the Jewish people than when women take off from their precious time? Summer is notorious for freedom, having fun, going on vacations. Nothing wrong with a family vacation, by the way. You should take one if you can. But it is a time when is so much of the precious hours in the life of a Jew during the summertime is wasted in Los Angeles. Wasted on Amazon.com, wasted looking into windows to see what they want to buy, wasted looking in magazines to figure out, okay, we'll remodel the kitchen for the third time this year. What color should we choose this time? What is a chos, what a merit to be part of this choshev gathering today, when there are women in Los Angeles, California who understand what really counts and what is really important and what is really going to help Be'ezus Hashem to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. A great, I guess in this town we'll say Chazak u'Baruch to Mrs. Chachamzadeh, and to Rabbi Chachamzadeh, and to the Kollel of Torat Chaim, Rabbi Levi Chaim and Rabbi Zagari, that they supply you and provide you with such wonderful opportunities like this to come together, to learn, to grow, and we hope with Hashem's help to make even minor changes in the way that we lead our lives. See, it's rough to be on the streets of Los Angeles. We are living in a generation and we live in times that is the times of the post-Beis HaMikdash. It's the time of the Chorban, the time of the destruction. It's 2,000 years already since HaKadosh Baruch Hu was dwelling with His Shechina in Yerushalayim HaKodesh. 2,000 years already since Kohanim were able to bring the korbanot, the sacrifices, to help grant atonement and bring peace to Klal Yisrael. It's 2,000 years already that the Jewish people have been dispersed in all Dalid convoys ha'aretz, all of the four corners of this world. And it's 2,000 years already of tsaros, of difficulty, of suffering, of pain, of assimilation, of intermarriage, of the total chorban, the destruction of Klal Yisrael. And we know the famous words that the Gemara in the Yerushalmi tells us, that any generation in which the Beis HaMikdash was not yet rebuilt, it's ke'ilu, it's as if that generation that we find ourselves in was machriv, is responsible for the destruction. Which means that for 2,000 years, Klal Yisrael does a very good job of being destroyers. But the goal on a day like today, and as we are approaching Tisha B'Av itself, is that we're tired of being responsible for the destruction and the gullus and the exile of 2,000 years. Rather, we would like to be known in the history of Klal Yisrael as the Bainim, as those people that are building and rebuilding and putting the bricks into the edifice of Yerushalayim Har Tzion, so that this year on Tisha B'Av we don't have to sit on the floor, but rather we can all be together, united as one in Yerushalayim HaKodesh, with the binyan Bayit Shlishi, with the third Beis HaMikdash. But that's only if we know how to build. In order to know how to build, we have to examine the things in this world that destroy. We have to look inside of ourselves, at our families, at our communities. We have to examine the long history of Klal Yisrael. And we have to figure out where we went wrong. And where we continue to make mistakes and we destroy. And when we learn the lessons and we see the message in the words of our Torah and Chazal, then with Hashem's help, we will be able to become that nation of Klal Yisrael that will be builders because of the new way in which we try to live our lives. There's a very famous pasuk in Mishlei, the words of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. And he writes the following: Moves v'chayim biyad lashon. Death and life is in the hands of the lashon of the tongue. V'oyaveha, someone who loves the words that are coming out of their mouth. Yoichal pirya, they will be the ones that eat the fruits of their dialogue, of their speeches, of their conversations, even simple between a husband and a wife. The Al-Sheikh HaKadosh writes on this pasuk, why does it say Maves v'chayim? Death and life. We're not such a morbid people, Klal Yisrael. On the other hand, we prefer to look for the positive. We'd like to see what's good about the Jewish people, what we can build. So the pasuk should have said, Chayim v'maves. Life and death is in the hand of the tongue. Why do we start with the negative, that death and then life is in the hand of our tongues? And the Al-Sheikh explains that the pasuk is telling us that unfortunately, it is much more natural and is much easier and much more casual to be a person that kills with their tongue than to be someone who gives chayim, who gives life with their mouth. The nature of a human being is the first words out of our mouth are the negative. And only if we truly work on ourselves to be aware, to hear the words that are emanating from our lips, then perhaps we will bring the chayim, the life, out of our mouths. Says the Al-Sheikh, examine the way that you speak. Think about the complaints. Think about the criticism. Think about putting people down. Comes so easily, doesn't it? But chayim, life, to build a person up, to speak words of Torah, to stop yourself from speaking lashon hara, to say, give somebody a bracha, a blessing, instead of a curse. That, says the Malbim, is more difficult than you could imagine. That, says the Al-Sheikh, is more difficult than a person could imagine. And there's a famous midrash. And the midrash says the following, quoting this verse, Mavis v'chayim b'yad lashon. Omar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel said, L'tevi avdi. He had a slave whose name was Tavi, and he told his slave, do me a favor. I want you to go to the marketplace and buy for me the best food that you can possibly find. So the Eved, his faithful servant, goes out to the marketplace and he comes back with a tongue, a cow's tongue. I hear in these parts it's a delicacy. Oh, says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, very nice, thank you so much. The next day he tells him, my faithful servant Tavi, go to the marketplace and bring me a bad food. I'd like to see what's bad in the marketplace. And the servant goes out to the shuk, to the marketplace, and he returns once again with a tongue, a cow's tongue. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, I don't understand. I ask you for something that's good, you bring me a tongue. I ask you for something that's bad, you bring me a tongue. What's going on over here? So he responds to him the following. And he says, Havetav leis tava mine. When the tongue is good, there's nothing better in the world than the tongue. However, the kadbish lay b'kabish, leis bish minei. But when the tongue is bad, there's nothing worse in the entire world than that tongue. When the tongue is infused with knowing how to speak, knowing what to talk about, how to talk, when to talk, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. The tongue is chayim, it brings life to this world. It builds. But when that tongue is infused with such horrible speech, and we don't have to speak about Lashon Hara because nobody speaks Lashon Hara in Klal Yisrael anymore. Certainly not this group of women. But when a woman will put her husband down for being a schlumpy guy, which all men usually are. You left your shoes in the middle of the floor again? What's the matter with you? When your child comes home from school and he has that forlorn look in his eye, don't start accusing him of playing games in school again and the Rebbe got mad at him and the Rebbe's right. We're supposed to build with our tongue, says the pasuk in Mishlei. Not to destroy. But the tongue is learn it in its art form. When it wants to be good, when it wants to speak the right way, it's the best. There's nothing better in this world. But when the tongue, unfortunately, finds itself in the worst and most insidious places, then the tongue can say only the worst, can destroy marriages, can ruin children, can rip up communities into threads, Rachmana litzlan lo aleinu, what this one tongue is capable of accomplishing. If that's the case, then we have to decide for ourselves, is our tongue good or is our tongue bad? Is our tongue speaking properly? We're not even aware. A person, I believe that if a person would keep track with a microphone on them all day long, and they would review at the end of a long day the conversations that they had, they would be surprised of the things that come out of their mouth. They would say, "Oh, that can't be me. Really? I really said that?" Yes. Not only at 10 o'clock in the morning, you said it at 10:14 in the morning, and 10:36 in the morning, and then there was a break because you were busy doing something else, but when you started opening your mouth again, it started saying the same thing. Do I really complain so much? I didn't know I was such a complainer. Yes, actually you are. You're a very big complainer because you're dreaming about that new knife that knows exactly how to cut that tomato without losing one seed, and then you go on to Amazon.com and you missed Prime Day, and it's all sold out. What is that all about? Is that what you're complaining about with your tongue? Is that why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a mouth? To complain about non-important things? That's only the non-important things. What about all the complaints about spouses? About our children? We get a call from the Rebbe. "Oh yeah, I know. Rebbe, you're right. My son is not using his potential the right way." So then what do? We have to lace into our children? What's the matter with you? Your Rebbe called again. He says you're not living up to your potential. You're not trying hard enough. What's the matter with you? That's how a mother, how a father speaks to a child. You're trying to kill them? Mavis v'chayim biyad haloshin. Death and life is in the hands of the tongue. It's up to us what we're going to do with it. There's a beautiful book, a biography that was just printed about Rav Meir Zlotowitz. He's the originator, the founder of Art School. Fascinating story. This was a man that had, from his birth, a very difficult life, but things never got him down. Except once. Once in his career as a human being, he felt that life was too hard to bear. It was 1971. He was a young married man, and he had 3 young children. Business was not going as well as he would have liked it to. Neither was his marriage. And after great deliberations and taking advice from their Rabbanim, he and his wife decided that they had no other choice but to get divorced. Now in 1971, now 2018, what's the big deal? Everybody gets divorced. In 1971, Jewish people had integrity. And people didn't get divorced like an aluminum pan these days. So there were problems, they tried to make it work. It didn't work, they tried to make it work. It didn't work, they tried to make it work again. So it was a rarity in 1971 for a frum couple with 3 little children to get divorced. It doesn't say in the book what the circumstances were, but Rabbi Horowitz became the father and the mother of these children. And he was raising 3 little children on his own. Trying to make a living, trying to work, trying to raise the children, make enough money, make lunches, change the diapers, send them off to school. He was overwhelmed beyond belief and he was breaking down. He decided, what does a Jew do when they are having a breakdown? They go and they speak to their Rebbe. His Rebbe was none other than the great Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal. So he took a trip from his house in Brooklyn and he traveled to the Lower East Side in Manhattan. And he went to the room, to the apartment where he had met his Rebbe so many times. And he was waiting and waiting and waiting in the waiting room. And he saw that Rav Moshe was having a very important meeting inside with different Rabbanim. Half an hour, an hour, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Rav Zlotowitz is sitting there feeling miserable for himself, reviewing everything that he has to speak to his Rebbe about. And after 2 or 2.5 hours, Rebbetzin Feinstein comes and she says, Reb Meir, I'm very sorry. The Rosh Hashiva can't meet with you today. He's involved in an important halachic conversation right now. A very big decision has to be made. He can't take any other visitors. I'm sorry, and he apologizes. And now he gets crushed even more. Even my Rebbe can't speak to me. What am I going to do? He goes back to his apartment. He sees his children. He thinks about his pitiful, sad life that is going on. And the next morning when he wakes up, there is a blizzard and a snowstorm in New York. Schools are closed, the roads are closed, and he is now trapped in his house, in his world of misery together with his children. And the day is going as slowly as it possibly could. Until come around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, the bell to his house rings. And he wonders to himself, who in the world has come out onto the streets in a blizzard snowstorm like there is today in New York? And he opens the door and he sees none other than his Rebbe, Rav Moshe Feinstein. And he says, Reb Meir, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to speak with you last night. There was an important meeting taking place. But today I have more time. And I came to see how you're doing and what's going on. He walks into the house, listen to the godless, the greatness. Rav Moshe sees the whole situation in an instant. And he begins playing with the children, talking to them, telling them stories. Rav Moshe Feinstein takes each and every one of the children himself and puts them to sleep. And after all of the children are asleep, he sits down and he says, Reb Meir, I came to schmooze. Tell me what's on your mind. And as if the torrent of tears, the dam was released, he broke down in front of his Rebbe and he poured out his heart to Rav Moshe Feinstein, and he told him all of his troubles, his difficulties, his pain, his suffering, everything. And Rav Moshe listened, and he listened, and he listened. And then he spent the next hour or so giving words of chizuk, of inspiration, to strengthen his students' resolve, to give him brachas. And he told him, Reb Meir, don't worry. You're going to see your business is going to turn around. You are going to be successful. And I want to give you a bracha for your children. Your children will become B'nai Torah, and they will all marry B'nai Torah as well. And with those words of blessing, Rav Moshe left his student, Rav Meir Zlotowitz. And Rav Meir said that for the rest of his life, he lived on that one night that Rav Moshe Feinstein braved the storm, came to the house, put the children to sleep, showed his love and his concern, and was mevarech, blessed him for his parnasa and for the simcha, the nachas from his children. And when art school would finally take off, he said, this is the bracha of Moshe Feinstein. And when he got remarried and they raised a bigger family, and his children became B'nai Torah, he said, this is the bracha of Moshe Feinstein. And when he would sit by a chasana surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, he would say, this is the bracha of my Rebbe, Rav Moshe Feinstein. Mavis v'chayim b'yad haloshin. Death and life is in the hands of the tongue. You can say a bracha and build a person up their whole life. They will never forget what you said to them. They will never forget how you made them feel. And so too is the other side, the mavis, the death. You could rip into a person and they will never ever forget how you made them feel. You can take HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us children. They are precious, pure vessels that Hashem gives us. We can build them, or Rachmana Litzlan, we can break them and turn them into nervous, fragile children that have no self-confidence about themselves because we beat them and we beat them and we beat them. That's all up to us. And as we sit here 2,000 years later in Gullus, in the exile, certainly we can all agree to destroy. We've all done enough destruction with this mouth. But to give chayim, to give life, and to build, we all have what we can work on. Rav Chaim Kanievsky has a sefer called Orchos Yosher. And in this sefer, it's his compendium of all of the words of Chazal that are stored away in his computer head that he has. And he goes through many different midas, many different character traits, many different elements of Yiddishkeit. And one of them that he writes about is called Shtika, is the art of being silent. Difficult for most women to achieve. Gemara says that there are 10 measures of speech that came down to the world. Women took 9, and you left us with 1. Thank you very much. So shtika, silence, being quiet, is a lost art form in the world of women. But he writes a fascinating midrash. And perhaps this will help us to control the urge to talk when we don't need to speak. The midrash says, "B'shah she'adam oyle b'machshava livrois." At the moment when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to create this particular individual, Goyzer alav kama sichais hu yasiach. Hashem decrees how many conversations this person is going to have. V'kama dibrois hu yedaber, and how many words they're going to speak. And he brings a raya, a proof from Dovid HaMelech, and then he writes, Vim yedaber yoisem midai. If a person speaks too much, yesh lochosh sheyigmar diborov, a person should start to get a little bit nervous. Perhaps They used up all of their words, shenigza alav, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu apportioned to them, min hashamayim. When the car runs out of gas, it stops running. When a person runs out of words, the person stops running in this world. That's it. It's the end of the story. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created you, He had in mind a certain amount of words, and the words that you're going to speak, how you're going to use them. If a person speaks good words, not yoyse midai, not more than he needs to. Even if you look in the earlier generations, the Rishonim, Rashi, the Rambam, the Ramban, and others, when they write their commentaries on Gemara, on Chumash, they use a few words because they know how to value every word that they said. But if a person just continues spewing forth all of those words, and of course words that they shouldn't say, things that they use their mouth for that they shouldn't use it for, then says the Midrash, Yesh Lochosh, you should be concerned. Perhaps you're using up all the fuel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting there inside of your mouth. The Pasuk said in last week's Parsha, Parshas Matos, Ish ki yidor neder la Hashem, when a person makes a vow to Hashem, or yishava shavua, or they make a promise, le'aser yisrael al nafsho, to prevent themselves from doing something, says the Torah, lo yachel devarai. Do not yachel. Do not cheapen. Do not desecrate any of the words. Do not desecrate any of the words that came out of your mouth. Rather, ya'aseh, do what you say you're going to do. A simple verse. Our words are binding. Whatever we say we're going to do, we have to do it. Don't make promises if you can't. Yeah, I'll do it, of course. You know, I found once a to-do list from about 7 years ago. Everything that was on that list, I still didn't do yet. Don't promise that you're going to do things and take care of it and make commitments if you know that you can't. Lo yachel devar, don't desecrate your words. Your words have power, they are potent. Rather, kechol hayotzi mipiv yaseh. Whatever comes out of your mouth, make sure to try your best to do it. The Avodas Yisrael says on this pasuk a very interesting idea. He says the drush, an idea that we can extrapolate from these words. And he says, Misha nizeh b'dibora, someone who is careful with their words. Levata choylel shum milo hayotzes mipiv. They don't desecrate a single word that comes out of their mouth. V'leite levatala, nothing goes to waste. This doesn't only mean I promise I'm going to do this, I swear that I'm going to do this. This means the words that come out of your mouth are being used properly. You're speaking to your friends, to your children, to your husband, to your rabbi in the right way. You're speaking to your sister in the right way, to your parents in the right way, and you're not wasting those words. Upon that person, the pasuk says, whatever comes out of this person's mouth, ya'aseh, he will do. Who will do? Says the Avodas Yisrael, the blessings of this person are going to endure. And every single word that he says is a decree that must be fulfilled by the Ribbono Shel Olam. As Chazal tell us, Tzadik goizer, a righteous person decrees, v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayim, and Hashem will fulfill their words. Okay, we're not tzaddikim, we're not righteous, we are not on the level where we can guarantee that whatever we say, the bracha is going to come true. That will leave for people like the Horowitz. They did a study, or an unofficial poll, of all the people that were alive in the world that said they got a bracha from the Chavetz Chaim, that they should have what's called arichas yamim, a long life. And every single person who claimed that they received the blessing from the saintly Chavetz Chaim for a long life, they all had a long life. Because the Chavetz Chaim guarded his mouth from speaking lashon hara, from speaking nivel peh, bad words. He didn't waste his conversation on foolishness and frivolity. His words, every word, like the Rosh writes, a person, when they are davening to the Rebbeinu Shalom, they should count out every word as if it's more valuable than money. The Chavetz Chaim didn't waste a word of his life, and therefore tzaddik goizer. A righteous man decrees, Hashem is going to fulfill. One of the stories that we know about this is about Rav Scheinberg Zatzal. Rav Scheinberg, anyone who ever saw pictures, ever saw him in person, he was one of the Gedolei Ador, the leaders of our generation. He wore about 100 pairs of talis cotton. It was like a mound of tzitzis. He wore his tefillin all day long. He was a kodesh, a holy, holy Jew with tremendous understanding of Torah. When Rav Scheinberg was a young man, he was learning in a yeshiva in Poland called the Mir. And one day the Chavetz Chaim came to visit the Mir yeshiva in Poland. And when the Chavetz Chaim walked into that yeshiva, everybody saw the Chavetz Chaim. They jumped up out of their seat out of honor and respect for him. Except for one person, Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, who was a young bacher learning at the time. And he was learning with such concentration, he didn't realize that the entire Beis HaMidrash of hundreds of young men had stood up and stopped learning in deference to the Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim was so amazed that there was a young man that could learn with such diligence. He walked over to Rav Scheinberg at that moment, and he stood over him, and Rav Scheinberg then sees the Chavetz Chaim, and he stands up, and he said, I want to give you a bracha. I give you a bracha that you should become a Talmid Chacham, that your children should become Talmidei Chachamim, and that you should have arichas yamim, you should live a long life. Rav Scheinberg became one of the Gedolei Hador, one of the leaders of our generation. His children all became Talmidei Chachamim and married Talmidei Chachamim. And he died several years ago at the ripe old age of 101 and a half. If you guard your mouth from speaking things that you shouldn't, you make you make your mouth chayim and not maves, life and not death. Thank you very much. Thank you. You make your mouth life and not death, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen to your words. We all have, thank you. We all have many things in our lives that we daven for. And one of the greatest complaints that I've been hearing over the last year, this year in particular, is I daven and I daven, I pray and I pray, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't listen to me. I never get what I ask for. The answer is very simple. If your mouth is a sewer system, if your mouth spends a majority of the day speaking about things that it should not speak about, and then you try to squeeze some pure tefillas through that mouth, it is impossible that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to hear your words in the proper way. Imagine you have the purest water in the world. Fiji water. It's not a commercial, I'm not holding anything of any other brand. Whatever is in your mind the purest triple osmosis from the Appalachian Mountains, wherever it came from, and you pour it through a rusty pipe. When the water comes out in the other end, the water is no longer going to be pure as it was from the source. It will be covered in filth and in rust, and nobody will want to drink it. Your tefillahs, your prayers can emanate from the purest source in your heart and in your soul. But if the pipeline that's expressing the words to Hashem are rusty and filled with filth and trash, then by the time the words of prayer have gotten out of your mouth, they are muffled and they are dirty and they cannot be heard by HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way that we want them to. Says the Avodas Yisrael, you want Hashem to listen to what you say? You want your blessings and all your tefillahs. Mothers, I'm sure that you cry by the candlesticks every Friday night for your children. And every parent wants nachas from their children. We have to make sure that the lips and the words that we use throughout the week, throughout the year, have a purity that are inside of them to make sure that when the words go through, they hit their mark, they make it to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Another idea about the power of speech that we have. The Torah tells us, as we all know, Leisisna es achicha bilvavecha. You are not allowed to hate your brother in your heart. Brother means your sister, means your husband, means your child, means your parents, means your in-laws. It means every single Jew. No matter how hard it is, Leisisna es achicha bilvavecha, you're not allowed to hate your fellow Jew in your heart. Rather, if you see them doing something that is wrong and it really bothers you, and you can't understand, how does this person who I look up to do such things? So you have a mitzvah, a positive commandment in the Torah to rebuke them. And don't bear iniquity or sin upon yourself for refraining from giving them the mussar, the rebuke that they need and they deserve. Rav Hirsch writes on this verse, what exactly is teichacha? What does it mean that when you see somebody doing something wrong, you go and you rebuke them? He says the key to giving rebuke in the proper way is the first part of the verse. You're not allowed to hate another Jew in your heart. Think for a moment, Rav Hirsch postulates. You see someone doing something wrong, someone treats you in the wrong way, you get upset. Well, I have a mitzvah to go rebuke them. So you go and you begin with your teichacha, with your rebuke. When you are angry and you are frustrated, and you are looking down on another person with disdain, is that the teichacha, is that the rebuke that the Torah is speaking about? No, says Rav Hirsch, that's not the rebuke. Rebuke, real teichacha, is something that allows the person that you are speaking to recognize on their own the mistakes that they are making, to realize for themselves how they have to change and become better and improve their ways. And then the rebuke that you are giving them is coming from a positive place inside of yourself. No anger, no disdain, no frustration. It's only because since I don't hate this person, rather I love this person, I want what's best for them. So the teichacha, the rebuke that I'm going to give to them will be in their best interest, not to blow off steam from my own self. And I was thinking once that if you look at the word teichacha, the Vilna Gaon tells us that almost every word in the Hebrew language can be broken down to a 2-letter root. The root of the word teichacha is koyach, is strength. The purpose of giving somebody teichacha, of rebuking them or criticizing them, is because I want to empower this person over here to recognize the strength inside of them and to be able to make the changes that are necessary, that they should become a better person. Teichacha can build a person up, or Rahman al-Itzlan, Teichacha, the way that we usually give over our rebuke to our children. I don't know why, but women feel that it's a mitzvah to give rebuke to their husbands. You know that your husbands hate it, don't you? Have you figured it out by now? No, you didn't figure it out. No, so I'm coming to reveal the secret of Shalom Bayis. I never met a man who enjoys getting ridiculed, criticized, and mustered out by his wife. On the other hand, as everybody knows, once you press the criticize button on your husband, you will turn your husband into a defensive animal who will have to prove and justify everything that he does is right, and you're the one that's making all the mistakes. So keep that in mind when you go home tonight, and his big size 13 shoe is lying in the doorway, and he crumpled up the towel after the shower once again and threw it on the floor, didn't leave it to hang like you've told him, and he presses the toothpaste from the middle, and you warned him 1,000 times. Squeeze from the back, and then we'll be able to use it better. Rav Yosef Tendler Zatzal, who was the Manayil of Ner Yisrael, had to deal with many different types of Talmidim, students over the years. And sometimes, unfortunately, he had to ask a student to leave the yeshiva because they were no longer the quality material that the yeshiva was looking for. And once, there was a young boy in the high school, we'll call him Maishi, and he was slipping in his observance. And Rav Tendler called him into the office several times. He says, Maishi, you know this is a yeshiva. You can't do this, you can't do that. Come, can you try harder? Yes, Rabbi, I'll try harder. But as the months went on, the boy was slipping more and more until he got to the point that it was hard for Rav Tendler to know how many mitzvahs he was still keeping. So Rav Tendler called him into his office and he said, it breaks my heart to do this, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave the yeshiva. Now Rav Tendler had a policy. Whenever he would ask a student to leave the yeshiva because he felt that the yeshiva was no longer the right environment for him, he would try his best to find him another yeshiva to go to. And sure enough, Rav Tendler made calls, and he tried to push him into that yeshiva and this yeshiva, and for one reason or another, he could not get the boy accepted into any other yeshiva. But he could no longer keep him in Ner Yisrael, and he apologized profusely, and he gave him brachas, and he told him, be in touch with me, and I hope and I pray for your best. And then he lost touch with this boy. Maybe about 4 years later, 3 or 4 years later, Rav Tendler is one day in Manhattan walking down the streets, and he passes a treif pizza restaurant. And as he's walking past the doorway, he looks up, and lo and behold, he sees this old student of his, Maishi, walking out of the restaurant that is not kosher, with a big slice of pepperoni pizza in his hand, shoving it into his mouth and eating it. And Rav Tendler looks at this young man, and the young man realizes that he just came face to face with his old Rebbe. And Rav Tendler looks at him and he says, you have such a beautiful life. Why are you wasting it? And he didn't say another word, and he walked away. Didn't scream, didn't yell, didn't say, what are you doing? Just said, you have such a beautiful life. Why are you wasting it? Several years later, Rav Tendler was sitting in his office. And a Yid, a Jew, a nice young man, beard, payas, hat, jacket, tzitzis hanging out, comes walking into Rav Tendler's office. And he says, Rabbi. He says, yes. Rabbi, I just came to thank you. Came to thank me? I don't even recognize who you are. He says, Rabbi, I'm Moshe. I'm the one that you saw in front of the pizza shop putting the tray of pizza into my mouth. Those words that you said to me on that day, you have such a beautiful life. Why are you wasting it? They went right into my heart. And I began thinking to myself, what am I doing with my life? And slowly but surely I began to do tshuva. Today I'm learning in yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, and look at me. It's all in your zechus, in your merit. That's the way we give teichacha. That's the way that we criticize. That's the way that we try to build up another person. Let them come to the conclusion on their own. Let them realize the mistakes that they have made. Let them recognize that there's another way that they could live and they could run their lives. You beat them over the head, you'll break them. You might get instantaneous results, but at the end, Rahman al-Islam, they're going to be shattered. I want to end with one last idea. A very profound idea which is brought down in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim. Just that we should understand the importance of our words as we are trying to build ourselves, our mishpachas, our communities, to build Klal Yisrael. Says the Nefesh HaChaim the following. He says, V'zois Torah ha'adam. Let this be the credo, the hallmark statement of a Jew. Kol ish Yisrael, al yoyme b'libay chas v'shalom. Do not, God forbid, say in your heart, Kimani, what am I? U'makoichi lifo b'maise ashvelim shuminin ba'olam. What am I that I could accomplish anything with my lowly actions here in this world? Amnam yeda, yavin v'yeda. Rather you should know and you should understand. V'yikba b'machshavos libay. And you should fix it into the thoughts of your heart. Shekol prate ma'isa v'diburav. All of your actions and all of your diburav, all of your speech. Umachshavosav, and all of your thoughts. Kol eis v'rega. Every moment. Loi isavidu chas v'shalom. They never are lost. Umarabu ma'asav u'moed gadlu v'ramu. How great are your actions. How much they could accomplish, how much you can change the world. In your actions, in your speech, and in your thoughts. But then he continues on the way of speech, and he says the following. The Gemara tells us, Umagid la'adam ma'asechai. At the end of a person's life after 120 years, the malachim in Shemayim are going to come and they're going to tell you la'adam ma'asechai, what you spoke about in your lifetime. Hizer kanes ha'adam, says the Nefesh HaChaim, be very careful. Machmas hayoisai ata b'za'olam ha'shafa, when you're in this lowly world down here, she'eno raya u'masig, you don't see, and you'll never fully understand. Listen to these words. Habinyan, the building, or harisa, the destruction, chas v'shalom, hanase l'mayla, that is done above, mikol dibor v'dibor shaloi, from every single word that you say. A person can never imagine that every single word that is coming out of your mouth, either it is going to build or it is going to destroy. maybe you'll think the following. What's the big deal? A little conversation, an offhand remark, a little bit of criticism, one drop of lashon hara. What's the big deal? It's not going to do anything to this world. But you should know with great emunah that every single word that comes out of your mouth, no matter how small it is, whatever comes out of your lips, it doesn't get lost, and it will not be wasted, God forbid. This is exactly what we are talking about. We live in a gullus for 2,000 years. We see around us everywhere that we look, harisa, destruction. We see assimilation, we see tsaros that are so great, nobody could imagine what would be in our generation. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, have we done enough? Have we destroyed enough in the world yet? The answer is the Peh Kadosh, the holy mouth that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us, is supposed to be used to build things up in this world. And if we will use it to build, you can never fathom that when the Beis HaMikdash will come down from Shemayim, they'll say, you see that brick? You see that Mizbeach? You see the altar over there? You know who built that altar? You know who's bringing the Karbanos? You and your beautiful mouth that you use for the right words here in this world. But if another Tisha B'Av is going to go by, and we're going to sit on the floor, of course, complaining about it also. You know, there's always that one guy in the back. How long is this going to be? One day of the year, Hashem says, sit on the floor. One day. Every other day, you're sitting in your lazy boy chair. You're in your comfortable car. Air conditioning is blowing just fine. One day of the year, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, sit on the floor, take off your shoes, don't take a shower, and more in the Beis HaMikdash. And there's always that one guy sitting in the back. He's also the same guy that talks during Kriyas HaTorah. And he's saying, oh, gosh, I'm uncomfortable. You're supposed to be uncomfortable on Tisha B'Av. That is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. If we'll use our mouth for the right things, if we will recognize that Chaim, life is in our mouth. The tongue is the greatest vessel in the world when it's used for the proper things. Then we will be responsible for the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. I know that the hour is late. I see that we are stirring, but I can't leave off until I tell you over this one fascinating ma'aseh, this one story. It's worthwhile to come today just to hear this. I should have told you at the beginning and then you could have left early. But let me just share one last story with you. And maybe, just maybe, we'll drive home the point a little bit more. There was a young couple. The name was Yossi and Sarah. And they were married several years. They had, Baruch Hashem, 2 beautiful children. They had a little boy whose name was Dovid, 3 years old, just had his upshir and his haircut. And a little baby girl who was only 14 months old that they just loved and they cherished. Everything in Yossi and Sarah's life was perfect. Nothing more they could ask for. One day Yossi is in work, in an important business meeting, and the secretary buzzes in frantic. Your wife is on the phone. She says she must speak to you immediately. Okay, put her through. Yossi. Yes, what's the matter? You know that Dovid hasn't been feeling well the last couple of weeks. Yes. I took him to the doctor. Yes. The doctor ran a bunch of tests. The doctor called just now and said he needs to see us in person and tell us what the results of those tests are. And he wouldn't tell me anything else. We have to go to the doctor immediately. Yossi's heart begins racing. He begins imagining the worst, hoping that it's not. He cancels the meeting, jumps into his car, saying Tehillim the entire ride home, and he comes and he looks in the house when he walks in, and suddenly this poor 3-year-old boy looks limp. He looks so fragile. He looks so frail. They take him in the car, and they go to Dr. Rubin, the doctor. And he has a very serious face on. And he says, we ran all of the battery of tests. And I am so sorry to share with you. Your son has a very rare and unusual disease. And there are not many cures for it in the world. And the parents feel that they were hit with a ton of bricks. They begin crying. And Yossi begins saying, please tell us, where's a doctor that we can go to? Tell me where the specialist is. We'll go to the ends of the world. Tell us how we're going to heal our child. And the doctor says, don't worry. I already know who the specialist is. There's a Dr. Green who lives in Boston. I've scheduled an appointment for you the Tuesday coming up. Get yourself ready. Go down to Boston and go to him. He's the only doctor that we know of in the world who has the cure to this disease. The parents wait anxiously till Tuesday comes around. They drive from New York to Boston. It's not such a long journey. And they come to Dr. Green's office. And the secretary sees the worried look on their face and she tells them, don't worry, Mr. and Mrs. Steinfeld, don't worry. Dr. Green is the best in his field. He's healed hundreds like your son. Don't worry, you're in good hands. Dr. Green comes and he meets the parents. And he looks at them. And they said, please, doctor, please, help us, help our son. And Dr. Green looks at them with this very mean, rugged look on his face. And he says, I am sorry. There is nothing that I can do for your child. I will not be able to heal him. Dr. Green, you're our last hope. We traveled from New York. They said you're the expert. He said, look at me once more as I tell you, Yossi Steinfeld, I will not heal your son. I didn't say that I can't. I said that I will not heal your son. Goodbye. Now Yossi begins thinking, he's calling me Yossi Steinfeld. He knows who I am. Who is this Dr. Green? Dr. Green, tell me, do you know me? He says, you don't recognize me? I don't recognize you, I'm sorry. Maybe you'll recognize the name of my son, Ruvain Green. Does that name ring a bell to you, Yossi? And suddenly Yossi begins remembering his youth in school and the boy named Ruvain Green. Do you remember now, Yossi? We were a family that moved to your town when my son Reuben was in 7th grade. A happy child, an enthusiastic child, a smart kid. We came from out of town and we were so excited to be part of this big city and community. And we were sure that our son was going to thrive in the new school with new friends. Do you remember now what I'm talking about? But you, in 7th grade when my son came, you bullied him around, you called him names. You made fun of him, you teased him. You got all of the other children in school to make fun of him as well. I went to the Rabbi. The Rabbi spoke to you, did nothing. I went to your parents. I cried to them. You're ruining my son. They spoke to you, did nothing. Yossi, I came to you myself. And I told you that you are sending my child off the derech HaTorah. Stop what you're doing. But you didn't listen to me. You just kept saying and doing the same taunting games every single day to my child. By the end of 8th grade, my son Reuven wanted nothing at all to do, not only with that school, but he wanted nothing at all to do anymore with Yiddishkeit. We decided if we'll move back to a small community, maybe it'll be a little bit warmer, they'll be nicer. My son will get acclimated again to his school and to his rebbeim, to Yiddishkeit. We came back, we came to Boston, small little community over here. And slowly but surely my son stopped doing all of the mitzvahs altogether. He doesn't even go by Reuven anymore. He changed his name to Robert, and I have not seen him in 5 years. And that's your fault. And now you want me to save your son after you killed mine? I will not save your child. And with that, he walked into his office, and that was the end of the conversation. Yossi and his wife went back to the hotel where they were staying, and they didn't know what to do. And Yossi remembered everything very clearly. And Dr. Green was 100% right. That night he went to sleep, Yossi. When he woke up in the morning, he told his wife, I just had the most fascinating dream ever. My grandmother, Aleh Shalom, who passed away, came to me in a dream and she said, Yossi, the Yeshua, the salvation, is waiting for you in Maine. That's another small state on the East Coast. The Yeshua, the salvation, is waiting for you in Maine. Go to Maine. So he looks at his wife and he says, I'm going to Maine. She said, well, where are you going to go? I don't know. But my grandmother said in the dream, go to Maine and you will find the salvation. I am going to Maine. He gets in the car by himself and he takes the 4-hour journey from Boston to Maine. And it's getting later in the day and he has no idea where he is. He decides, as he sees the sun beginning to set, he might as well at least go to a shul, daven mincha, and then he'll turn around and go back to New York. But he sees no shul in sight. So he pulls into a gas station. He gets out of the car. The gas station attendant says, yes, sir, can I help you? He says, I'm sorry to bother you, sir. Do you know where I can find a synagogue around here? Synagogue. The guy's not, synagogue. No idea. I don't know where a synagogue is. I have no idea. He says, please, sir, I just drove from Boston. I'm just looking for a synagogue. Is there anybody here who would know about the Jewish community? He says, hold on 1 second. Robert, come over here for a second. Someone has a question to ask you about the Jewish community here. As soon as Yossi hears the name Robert, he said, it cannot be. And walking over to him is a young man his age. Hair all over the place, no yarmulke, but the face is the face of Reuven. And Reuven looks at him, and Yossi says, Reuven? Reuven Green, is that you? And in an instant, Reuven recognizes who Yossi is, and he says, Yossi Steinfeld, get out of here right now. If you don't leave the premises, I will strangle you to death with my own bare hands. Get out of here. I never want to see you again. And he begins groveling, please, you don't understand. I have a 3-year-old son who's dying. Your father's the only one that can save him. And he won't help us because of what we did to you, please. He said, you think I'm going to tell my father to save your son? After you drove me away from my Yiddishkeit and my parents, and I'm living out here in the middle of Maine? I'm going to go to my father? I haven't seen him in 5 years. Get out of here before I strangle you with my own hands. And he's trying, he's crying, now please, groveling, begging. Nothing. And Robert walks away. Gets back in his car. He drives back to the hotel in New York and he tells his wife everything that took place. She said, tomorrow we're going back to Maine, but I and the baby are coming with you. Maybe if he sees our child, maybe it will crack his stone heart and he won't be able to say no. They drive back the next day. They pull up into the gas station, and there they are, father, mother, and limp, almost lifeless baby hanging by a thread of life in their arms. And they begin walking over, and Robert begins screaming, I told you, don't come here again. But now he looks and he sees the wife and this sick baby there. And suddenly they see in his eyes a little glimmer that he feels sorry for them. And Yossi and his wife begin crying and they begin begging him, please, you don't know what's going on over here. And he says, I know what I did. I know that I was wrong. I don't know what I can do to make it up for you, but whatever I can do, I promise you, I will make it up to you. Please come with us back to Boston. Go to your father and tell him to heal our baby. He said, I haven't seen my father in 5 years already. You want me just to go back right now and show up and say, save the child? And they begged and they pleaded and they cried. And they broke into the heart of this young man and he said, okay, I will come with you. They drive back to Boston. Before they go to the doctor's office, he said, please stop at the barber. I need a haircut. I cannot show up looking like this to my father. He gets a haircut. He asks Yossi for a yarmulke. He puts it on his head. They walk into the doctor's office. And the secretary looks up and she says, Reuven? Reuven, is that you? Reuven, is that you? And Reuven looks at her and he nods his head. And she calls Dr. Green, Dr. Green, Dr. Green, come quickly. And Dr. Green comes running, thinks it must be a medical emergency, and he looks through the plexiglass over there and he sees his son for the first time in 5 years. And he says, Ruby, is that you? And his father comes breaking through the door and they embrace each other, hugging, bitter, sobbing tears. And they just keep saying, Ruby, Tati. I can't believe that you came back. And he said, Tati, please, this is Yossi and his wife and their sick child. You're the only one that has a chance to heal them. We worked it out between us. I forgive him for whatever it is that he did. Please don't let this child die because of our fight from so many years ago. Please. And the doctor looks at Yossi and his wife and says, you brought back my son. You brought him back to me. I will do my best to give your son life. And sure enough, true to his word, he worked diligently on this child. And after all the treatments and all the medications and everything that he went through, the child had a refuah shalema. Reuven was so inspired by the entire story, he picked up and he went to Eretz Yisrael. He went to a yeshiva for Balei Tshuva. He became a real Baal Tshuva, Frum Yid once again. 2 years after becoming religious, he was introduced to his wife, and they are living happily in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, learning Torah and raising a family that is a nachas to Hashem. Chaim, life is in the Yad Haloshin, is in the hands of one's mouth. If you want to build yourself, and you want to build your husbands, and you want to build your children, and you want to build your mishpachos, and you want to build Klal Yisrael, and you want to build the Beis HaMikdash, only one way. Use your mouth for what it was given to us for. And that is to create chayim, to give life into this world. May we be zeicha emir to Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the strength to guard our tongues, to watch the way that we speak, to eradicate the mavis, the deathly words that penetrate into the hearts of everyone around us, the way that we say them and when we say them. And in that zechus in Yetz Hashem, we should be zeich that our tefillah should be heard by Hashem. And instead of sitting on the floor on Sunday, on Motzi Shabbos on Saturday night, and on Sunday, of course, not with complaining, but sitting on the floor, but instead of all of that, we should be zeichet to see all of the bricks that we rebuilt inside of the Beis HaMikdash through the chayim, through the life that we gave through our words. Bimheira v'yameinu.